on this computer. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation in this first impact talk regarding multiculturalism, soft skills, and other topics that we are going to introduce through this series of talks. We start, let's say, our academic season. So I would like all of you to have a very successful academic season for the following months. My name is Kostas. I represent the Hellenic Mediterranean University, the International Relations Office, but together with my colleagues, all of us, we are colleagues from the impact projects and all over the world. We organize these lectures that are very much tailored with the needs and the priorities of internationalization of higher education. I'm extremely happy that we have together with us Professor Zaid Bouzouyaner. I hope that my accent is terrible, even in my English, it's very Greek. I would like to excuse Zaid for my accent. He's going to speak to us about a very nice topic. And I think that if we can copy this to all over the place, we are going to be very international citizens. Bridging cultural difference, how Arabs and Westerners communicate. Professor Zaid Bouzouyaner, he's like a professor in the University of Sharjah in United Arab Emirates. His interests include media policy, global communication, that I suspect this is part of this research interest of Zaid, public service media, sociology of algorithms, media management. His work has received more than 700 citations, and we are here to listen to Zaid. Zaid, I would like to thank you very much once again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kostas. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Just need a minute to share my screen. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
I mean, probably you need to change to switch the displays because we can see the presenter's view. So probably you need to switch the monitor.
Okay, how do I do that?
Up to the top left corner, it says switch the displays.
Okay, display setting, swap presenter view. Okay.
Yes.
That's better. Okay, excellent. Yeah. All right. So, as you can see, this is the title of my presentation. I really want this to be interactive. I don't mind receiving questions or comments in the middle of the presentation. So if you want to say something, just raise your hand and yeah, I'll let you speak. And then I'll ask a few questions throughout the presentation where I would need you to respond either through the chat or turning on your microphone and speaking. I hope that's okay with you, Kostas. I mean, to have this more interactive presentation. Now, the genesis really of this research goes back to IBM. IBM grew as a multinational organization in the 60s and 70s. They had they have offices in more than 50 countries in all continents around the world. And there were some issues in terms of organizational communication within the organization. Basically, the head office was in the US, but then all the other offices were scattered around the world, Latin America, Europe, Middle East, Asia. And there were some issues with communication, and Gert Hofstede was working at the time there, and he conducted this survey where he asked questions that focus primarily on communication. It's a survey of about 116,000 IBM employees, and out of that survey, he realized that the way people speak in organizations reflect certain, like the cultural values and ethics within the organization reflect or are indicators of national cultures. And out of that, he came up with these 6 dimensions: the power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, or what we would call today assertive versus passive because the gender thing is quite a hot issue right now. Uncertainty avoidance, long-term versus short-term orientation, and indulgence. No, go back. Indulgence versus restraint. I mean, these, again, I'm just mentioning this as the like kind of theoretical foundation. Like, this is where the work all started, and then of course, I mean, this presentation is an extension of that. Like, I'm not going to cover the 6 dimensions in any particular order or with any particular details, but I'll, you know, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about kind of stems from this research. Now, before I begin, cultures are different because they're different. I mean, there's no culture better than another culture. There's no hierarchies here of cultures. When we talk about differences, they're just differences because people chose to live differently, and that's it. There is nothing right or wrong about how each culture does whatever they do. Of course, there are consequences for that in terms of how efficient, you know, things happen within the workplace and so on and so forth. But there are no judgments here in terms of comparing the Western culture versus the Arab culture. And again, I'm going to be talking about broad generalizations. And when we talk about the West, it's basically North America, Western Europe, Northern Europe, and there are variations there as well. You know, and the same thing for the Arab world. I mean, there are huge variations, but what I will cover are basic just generalizations. Okay. Now, before I start, I want to tell you a story. Okay, this is a true story that a hotel manager told me. That's something that happened to him. Okay, now this hotel manager was walking in the lobby, and he noticed one of the guests, who was American, asking the person at the reception desk about how to mail you know, a package. He needed to mail something back to the US, and he was asking for help. Now, the hotel manager told me he was in a good mood, and he was going out to run some errands, and he figured, well, he's going to help this guest. So he asked the guest if, you know, you know, what he needed. He said, I want to go to this place. I need to ship, you know, a package. And the guy said, well, you know, if you don't mind, I have a couple of things to do very quick, and then I'll take you to the, you know, to the post office or whatever, and then I'll help you ship this. So he went with him, and when they got to the post office or the, you know, post office, I mean, there was a long line, and he waited there with him, and, you know, he made sure that he translated, you know, he did everything to make sure this guest was really comfortable, and he got his package sent out, and then he drove him back to the hotel. They shook hands. The American guest was very, very appreciative, and then they said goodbye. Now, the next morning, the hotel manager again was walking in the lobby, and he saw the American guest complaining this time to the reception desk about not having hot water in the, you know, in his bathroom, in the shower. And the hotel manager, I mean, this was happening in Morocco, okay, in an Arab country. The hotel manager is Moroccan, or is an Arab. Okay, sorry. So he walked over to the American guest, and he told him, well, what's wrong? And the guy said, well, you know, there is no hot water in the bathroom. And then the hotel manager said, well, you know, it's no big deal. We'll fix it. So it's okay. And the American guest got very angry by the fact that the hotel manager would tell him that it's no big deal, that it will get fixed. I mean, then he continued talking about the fact that he paid for a service he's not getting, that the hotel is sloppy and that they're not professional. And the hotel manager gets also really angry because, you know, well, I just helped you yesterday, you know, deliver this thing, and I was there with you waiting in line, and I had translate and all of this. How dare you speak to me like this? And the American guest was like, well, you know, this is a completely different thing, and this hotel is a mess, and, you know, I couldn't take my shower on time, you know, and that was the situation. Now, in your view, what's happening here? Like, if I can get like one or two people to comment on this situation, what do you think is happening here in terms of the American guest being angry and the Moroccan hotel manager also being angry and not able to communicate in an effective way to solve this problem? If anybody wants to volunteer, like just maybe.
So no communication will happen. Both of them, they are going to be angry and they're going to stand at the same point. I mean, nothing will, they're not going to resolve anything. They just lose a lot of energy because probably they would like to say the same. Probably both of them, they would like to satisfy each other, but because of lack of communication, nothing happens.
Okay, yes, yeah, makes sense, yes. All right, well, I mean, this is a very...
I'm curious to listen to Hubertus, but he is a little bit shy. But anyhow,
I can say, well, first of all, sorry for being late. I can say something to that. I think it could be a bit ritualistic, you know, that both sides kind of vent a little bit of their steam. At the same time, it could be about high and low context communication.
Yeah.
A little bit in the sense that, you know, the Americans would expect an apology, and the Moroccan hotel manager was maybe thinking of the technical issue that he was aware of and didn't say that, you know, he didn't say it the right way or not according to the expectations that an American guest would have in such a situation. But I don't know. I've never been to Morocco, so I'm only guessing here.
No, and you guessed right. It's really about context. Okay, it's about context. Now, for the American guest, the Western culture is very low context. Each situation is separate. Each situation is different. So the American guest, what happened yesterday, happened yesterday. We shook hands and said thank you. That's a separate thing. That's it. We're done. Now this morning I don't have hot water in my shower. I'm complaining about it. I'm expecting a reaction that would help me resolve this. For the Moroccan, because Arab culture is high context, what happened yesterday matters today, and what happens today will matter tomorrow. And it's a whole baggage of things that we're going to carry around with us, because relationships are more important than tasks. So that's really what's happening here. For the American, what happened yesterday has nothing to do with what's happening today. For the Moroccan, the Arab, what happened yesterday has a lot to do with what's happening today. So because I did you a favor yesterday, when when this situation happened, you should take that into account when you complain about it. And especially, so the American guest was complaining to the reception desk. When the Moroccan manager came to talk to him, the Moroccan was expecting him to cool down. He was expecting him to be grateful for what happened yesterday, and therefore would, maybe not complain as much, or would accept, the Moroccan's response. So this is a really a classic case of high and low context. Okay. So yes.
May I ask you something on this?
Yes.
So what's going to happen if a high context with a high context persons, they have a fight?
No,
what's going to happen?
No, if it's a Moroccan guy who, if the guest was an Arab, was another Arab, in the morning when he goes to the reception desk to complain about not having hot water, he will complain about it to the reception desk people. But the moment he or she sees the hotel manager, they will definitely calm down. They will definitely be more polite, more respectful, because they know that this person is a good man. This person, helped me out yesterday, and they were very nice yesterday. And now, that I have this issue with water, I'm just going to be very polite about it, and they would be willing to even forget about it. Okay. So yeah, so that's what would happen really. That's the Moroccan guest would just, I mean, but again, he or she will only be polite with that Moroccan manager, with the hotel manager, because of what happened yesterday. But if that guy is not there and it's just the reception desk, they'll complain about it. They'll say, yeah, you know, this, I paid for a service and I should get that service delivered as it should be. So the detail, so context matters for Arabs. Okay, relationships matters for Arab. In Western for Western culture, the meaning is always in the message. Like every situation is different. We don't carry things around like, you know, the details are in the message. It's more explicit. Basically, when the Moroccan manager came to see the American guest, and he told him it's no big deal. What is implicit there, you know, what is implicit is that, well, remember what I just did for you yesterday. You see, that was not spoken. That's not something the Moroccan would say to the American guest, but it's implicit. But for the American guest, well, you know, I mean, if he, you know, he would expect him to be, I guess, more explicit. But, you know, again, this is a classic case of high-low context cultures. Moving on, the other issue is relationship versus task-oriented communication. Communication in Arab culture tend to be more relationship-oriented. Building trust, personal connections are important, and they're essential before diving into business discussions. Arabs would engage more in small talk, I mean, they would ask you about your family, try to find connections with you before moving on to, you know, to the task, to the heart of the matter. Like if there is a meeting and if you have a meeting with people in an Arab context, usually people will engage in more talk, and then, you know, where does your kid go to school? Oh, my kid also went to that school, and they'll try to find some kind of connection there because relationships are more important. But in Western cultures, the tendency is to be more focused on the task, to be more efficient, straight to the point. And I mean, and you can see this really from like when we write job applications, when you write them in English, you say, dear sir / madam or something like that, or dear hiring committee, I'm writing to apply for the position. I believe I have excellent qualifications, and here are my qualifications, and I look forward to an opportunity for the interview. If you write the same letter in Arabic, you have to start with an introduction. That's how happy you are, how honored you are to, you know, to apply to this prestigious institution, and you have to really kind of, I mean, none of it is true, you know, because you don't really mean that, you know, fully, but you say it because that's just the culture. And it would be rude to start a letter in Arabic, an application letter in Arabic saying, I'm writing to apply for the position. Well, you know, you have to introduce it with something. You have to build some kind of rapport, some kind of relationship, you know, some kind of bond of some sort, yeah, before you say what you have to say. Moving on, the issue of power distance, something that Hofstede talks about. Power distance is, I mean, is the extent to which hierarchies don't matter or matter. I mean, it's, for example, within a Western context, the way like employees talk to their boss, I mean, the boss is basically a colleague, like the power distance is very low, that we don't look at hierarchies to be of that importance. While in the Arab world, power distance is high. For example, if you want to meet the dean of the college or the vice president, you have to make an appointment, you have to dress up in some way. Usually, you know, I mean, you can't just, and also when we call each other or write emails, even now, I'm here in the UAE, I have friends, I mean, very close friends. And when I'm writing emails to them, I have to say doctor, you know, it's just this, because, I mean, If I'm writing on WhatsApp or something, it's different than because it's personal, but within work environments, you know, hierarchies matter, and we have to kind of respect that. In the Western world, it's not. I mean, I remember this time I visited this university. It's called In Holland University in Amsterdam, and I was in a during lunch. We're having lunch in this it's not cafeteria, just like a break room in the at the department. And the dean was there, the heads of departments were there, students were there, faculty were there, and everybody was talking to everybody like they were all friends. Like there was no power. You can't even tell who is who from that, neither from the way they were dressed or from the way they talk to each other. Now, imagine the same situation in an Arab context. It would not be that way at all. Power hierarchies are highly respected. Decision-making is also, I mean, this is part of the collectivist versus individualist dimension of the culture. Decision-making is more collective in the Arab world. I mean, I'll give you one example about this. In terms of, because it's a reflection of cultural values, I've asked my students, and I did this in three environments. I was TA for like 5 years, teaching assistant. This is before I finished my PhD while I was in the US, and in Morocco, here in the UAE, and in Holland, that university, the same university, because I used to go and teach there for a couple of weeks a year. And I ask students this question. I say, if you meet the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, okay, and you introduce that person to your parents, and your parents say no, period, okay? No, you're not, you know, it's either, you either have to choose that person or you choose your family. What would you do? And this is an overwhelming, I mean, basically it's in the American and the Dutch context, students said, I'll go with the guy. I'll give up on my family. My family don't love me. If they don't respect my choice, then they don't love me, and therefore they become irrelevant. In the UAE and the Moroccan context, again, all the students, Arab students, they say, if my family say that, then I'll have to stick with the family. And this is really, I mean, I've done this experiment a few times throughout the past 25 years that I've been teaching, and it's the same response. And this gives you an idea of how family, how collectivist really Arab culture is versus Western culture. In Western culture, it's me, my future, my choices, my life. And if people I love don't support me and my goals and my wishes, then, you know, they don't really love me. But in the Arab context in general, it doesn't work like that. I mean, of course, students, they say, well, I will convince them, I will write a petition, I will do a hunger strike, I will, you know, to push pressure on my family. And I say, well, suppose you do all of that. And they say, no, it's the same answer. I'll stick with the family and I'll give up on the man, woman of my dreams. And this is, in a way, a reflection of this, collectivist. Another thing is, but we'll cover this in a little bit in terms of disagreements. Politeness and formality. Politeness exists, of course, in both cultures, but in informal settings, Westerners favor more casual, egalitarian style of interaction. Of course, addressing someone by their first name is very common. I mean, in the US, when I was teaching, everybody called me by my first name. In Morocco, UAE, I beg students to call me by my first name, and nobody does. I mean, I keep telling them, don't. They say always doctor, always professor. They would never do that because, again, of this respect for hierarchy, authority. It's just the way it is. Hospitality is really an important thing for the Arab culture. For example, like if you knock on someone's home or if you visit someone's home and they happen to be eating, in the Arab culture, they will invite you in and they will ask you to sit and eat with them. And it would be completely rude for them not to do that. I mean, even if they're not eating much, they will still share with you whatever they have, because this is just part of a very, very deeply rooted tradition of hospitality. The Western culture is really the opposite. You go into someone's home, especially if you're unannounced, even when you're unannounced, and they're there and they decide to eat something, they may offer if you need to eat something or drink something, but usually if they're about to eat their lunch, they're going to eat their lunch and they're not going to share it with you. And they may ask, and if you say no, it's fine. Okay, they're not going to insist. But in the Arab culture, they will insist, and that's just something that is deeply rooted in our culture. Directness versus indirectness in terms of communication. Arab culture generally favors a more indirect style of communication. If the Arab culture, when we disagree on something, we try to say it in ways that would not hurt the other person. I mean, it's just another thing is in terms of the directness in language. Like in English, in the English language, if you can say something in 7 words, say it in 7 words. Don't say it in 10. Like concision is more valued. In the Arab culture, if you can say if you can say something in 7 words, but you say it in 20 words, that's even better. It's actually embellishment in the language is considered to be a good thing, as opposed to in the English language. The English language, again, if you can say something in 7 words, say it in 7, and if you can say it in 5, that's even better. Say it in 5 words. In the Arab culture is a little bit different. That's embellishment is valued. I mean, even as a rhetorical device to make your language sound better. Expression of emotions. This is really it's a big one. I mean, because Arabs usually are seen to be too emotional because they use hand gestures a lot. The tone of voice can get loud, but I mean, a lot of times when we perceive an Arab to be angry, or we see his or her behavior to be a form of aggression, actually it's not. I mean, it's really a sign of excitement, a sign of passion, much more than it is aggression. In the West, generally speaking, again, I mean, I don't know if you look at, I don't know, south of Spain, south of Italy, maybe even Greece. I mean, those cultures, of course, are very much similar to, to North African cultures in terms of emotionality and all that. But for like Northern Europe, Western Europe, North America, calm, composed behavior is more idealized. Like, in a debate, for example, if you lose your cool, if you lose your composure, you lose. If you lose that, you lose the debate. It doesn't matter what you say, but if you get angry in terms, and that's just part of the of the culture. So when you see an Arab being emotional, that's not an indication of aggression or indication of anger. Okay. It can be, of course, but most of the time it's not. It's just someone showing excitement, and we don't shy away from showing excitement. In the Western world, especially in a public or professional setting, emotions have to be kept moderate. I really need to. I just checked the time. I need to go quicker. Silence is something that has positive meaning in Arab culture. And I've noticed this a lot, especially during my working in American Dutch, I mean Western context. Silence in a meeting, for example, in a Western context, makes people uncomfortable. Well, that's not the case for Arabs. Actually, pauses in conversations. I mean, we're comfortable with that because we see that as we don't see it as as a sign of disengagement or confusion or none of that. Okay, so silence is something that you might observe, like if you're in a meeting with Arab people and there are moments of silence during the meeting, it's not an indication of them being disinterested. It's just a sign of respect, opportunity to reflect, and Arab people are more comfortable with silence, moments of silence in the middle of a meeting or in the middle of an interaction. Now, nonverbal communication, very quickly. The first thing is eye contact. For Western cultures, eye contact denotes trust. I tell my students, when they come to me and they say, well, faculty, especially if they're Westerner, if they, he doesn't believe me because, I was late for the assignment because of this or that. And I say, well, did you make eye contact as you were telling him or her this, your excuse? And they say no, because, eye contact sometimes is seen as, among Arabs as, like too much of it may not denote respect in some situations. But again, in Western cultures, eye contact denotes trust. So if you want to say something and you want the person to believe you, you have to keep eye contact with them as you're telling them that, because that's really important. For Arab cultures, it just signals attentiveness and respect. It's not a sign of trust. Like if somebody is telling you something and not making eye contact, it doesn't mean that they're lying to you. That's how Arabs see it. In Western culture, if somebody's saying something to you and not making eye contact, well, it sheds doubt on how trustworthy they are. The handshakes, I mean, this is very much, in the West, usually it's a firm handshake. Arab culture, it's more soft, but I still notice differences. Like in Morocco, firm handshake is a good thing, but here in the UAE, and I think in the Gulf states, a firm handshake is not really a good thing. Like when they shake your hand, they shake it really soft, and it's just how they do it. Okay. Proxemics, I mean, these are just general rules about distance, 2 to 4 meters. That's how much distance we maintain in public spaces. Social spaces, it's 1.5 to 3 meters. Personal space usually is 0.5 meter to 1.5 meters, and intimate space is less than 50 meters. I mean, these are general rules. Okay. Now, Westerners standing too close to someone can be perceived as intrusive or uncomfortable. I mean, if the only people who are allowed into your private space to be able to touch you or get close to you are people you're intimate with, parents, siblings, spouse, and so on. So that private space, nobody can get in, even in public space, even if you're waiting in line for something, people always keep that space. In the Arab culture, that's not it. Like if you're waiting in line for something, in an Arab country, people will stand very, very close to you. Okay. I'm not sure if you heard that joke about the Moroccan and the Arab and the American standing on a roof having a conversation, and the Arab is getting closer to the American is moving back, and then guess what happens? The American falls up the roof, because for the Arab, again, being at close proximity with another person is not seen, it doesn't make us uncomfortable. So what do we do in an elevator? Okay, I mean, in Western culture, you get into the elevator, you turn your back and you face the door. In the Arab culture, turning your back at somebody is kind of disrespectful. So we end up like with our faces, looking at each other, which it makes me uncomfortable. But anyway, time dimension, it's an important one. Westerners take time commitment very seriously. Promptness is highly appreciated. And 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. It's not 9:05. It's not 9:10. But in the Arab culture, generally, time commitments are basically objectives to be achieved if possible. Like 9 o'clock doesn't really mean 9 o'clock. Coming late to a meeting is quite normal. But again, these are really broad generalizations. In my experience in Morocco, coming late is normal, is okay. I mean, like if the meeting's at 9, people leave their offices at 9, to get to the meeting. And then it takes 5 minutes for them just to say hello to everybody before the meeting actually starts. When I came to the UAE, I was surprised about how prompt meetings start. Like promptness is highly valued at least at this institution, that meetings start on time. And yeah, coming late to a meeting is not, commitment to time and to promptness is taken very seriously. Now, some tips on intercultural communication. I mean, I have another lecture on culture shock, maybe for another time, about like when if you're a student, you go as an exchange somewhere, like what happens, the stages of culture shock, but that's something that we can do another time, or maybe another colleague can do it. But in terms of tips, I mean, just be patient. Like if you work in a multicultural environment, just be patient with yourself and others. Just know that when you see, when you live in a different culture, I mean, I like Raymond Williams' definition of culture. Culture is just, it's a whole way of life, basically. It's just a whole way of life. That's just how people live. And it's important to just accept that and try to understand it, not from your own perspective, but from the perspective of the people. I mean, I noticed something here in the UAE, like what people dress. They always dress in this abaya, like it's this piece of cloth. It's very long, and they also always cover their head with a piece of cloth, and all their clothing. I mean, they don't use short sleeves. And when you think about how much heat there is in this country, I mean, why aren't people wearing short sleeves? And again, if I judge it from my perspective, it doesn't make any sense. But from their perspective, it's a protection from sun, from the sun, from the UV. It's really smart, to dress like that. In a climate like this. It's just, I mean, when you really see it from their perspective, you tend to, and also you don't have to think about what to wear every day. Like we stupid people that every day we have to think, what should I wear? Well, they don't here. They just have a white thing they wear every day. The ladies, the women, they wear this black also abaya. And every morning when they wake up, they don't have to think about this, and it's so practical and so, I mean, it's just, it makes your life really easy, in addition to the clothing really protects you from the sun. And if you notice a behavior, you don't understand something, just ask. Okay, I mean, people generally are good at explaining, and they really like when people are curious about their culture. When you ask a question, you get an answer, you stop making assumptions. Humor is something that you can't engage in at the very beginning. Humor can be quite a tricky thing. So if you move to a new culture, just, stay for a little while till you understand the nuances of the culture before you start cracking jokes that may be insulting to people. Of course, now with the internet, we have all these resources to understand all the cultures. And we're all different in this world, and we all have come from different cultures, and we all seem strange to each other. So again, just we need to embrace these differences instead of seeing them as bad things. I took so much time. We've been talking now for like 40 minutes or so. I'm going to stop to hear your questions, your comments.
Thank you very much, Zaid.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please, if you can stop sharing the screen, I would appreciate. We have like something like 10 minutes for questions. I can see we have a question. The first one was Ahmed, and then it will be Hubertus. I don't know, but Hubertus is like enjoyed a lot your presentation. So Ahmed, the floor is yours for the question to Zaid.
Yeah, I just want to say like that actually it's I think in the Arabic world, like in terms of clothing, we're more strict, because as far I have visited like Saudi, UAE, other countries, like Arabic countries, they take it actually, other than the locals that can actually wear the white thobe, as you call it. But I think if you're not a local, a Saudi or Emirati or one of the local nationals there. I think you're required to be like really strict and wear like a definitive clothing, like mainly for like more unlike Europe. Like I believe in the work environment in Europe, you can just go there with shorts and t-shirts, but I think it's not really the case in the Arabic world. Like you're always expected to wear shirts and also sometimes you're always required to wear like suits, even though it's like really hot there to actually to always like be formal. That's just my comment. That's it.
I think it's a very good. Please,
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's it's true that for the locals they all wear that uniform, so or abaya. I mean, for the others, yes. I mean, the culture, the organizational culture generally in the UAE in particular, and I'm sure it's the same in the other Gulf countries. Its clothing is more formal. So you have to wear like a shirt, pants. I mean, for women, there are also additional requirements for women. That clothing has to like, I think up to your knees. That's, and no showing of the shoulders. I mean, there's these restrictions based again on the local culture and the local traditions and religious beliefs. And again, these are just things that, part of the culture. Yeah.
Thank you, Zaid, and thank you, Ahmed, for the comment. I have some questions. First of all, since we are coming from, the majority of us, we work in a university. And, one of the university's roles is like to build the global citizens, because now the opportunities are everywhere. How can we teach and how we can cultivate and what are the good policies in order to learn our students to be acceptive, adaptive, because you spoke about the cultural shock. So the students, they should be prepared because this cultural shock will come either through their education pathway or as a professionals. So how we can prepare our students to be adaptive, because you should be adaptive and respect the local culture that probably you are going to work. What are some good policies or what are your suggestions, Zaid, as an academic?
I think, I mean, what we're doing right now is part of it. I mean, like initiatives like these are part of it, like encouraging students to go for exchange programs. I mean, and this is all the international offices, they do this. There are also a lot of other programs like Solia, can't remember all the names, but I mean, these are programs, they're funded. And what you do is you match two courses, like you take a course from a university in the UAE with a course from a university in Greece, and then the teachers, they meet and they agree on an assignment, and then they have the students connect with each other to work on a project, and just facilitating these interactions, opening up these new spaces for these students from different cultures to interact and communicate. I mean, this goes, a long way. Now, of course, we have the internet and we have YouTube and all our students are global in some sense. I mean, they're more global at their age than we were in our age, but still, like when you move to a new culture, it's a completely different ballgame, So, I mean, those exchange programs help a lot. And again, and initiatives like these where we connect classrooms together to create a space where students from different cultures talk. That's also can help facilitate. I mean, I mean, once you engage with others, you realize how similar we are. I mean, we share more things than than things that it's really the small things that we don't share, but the basic humanity is there. It's and we just have to look beyond the thobe, to look beyond the skin color, to look beyond the language, to look beyond these things, and then to find humanity in each other.
Thank you, Zaid. The floor is to Carla. Carla is a colleague.
Hello. Now introduce me, please.
Hello.
No, you are going to introduce yourself. I mean,
Okay, if you want. No, I was just about to say hello to everybody. Okay, so my name is Carla Pinto. I'm from the Polytechnic of Porto. I just would like to remark one thing. I agree with everything that Said just said, absolutely in everything. And I think we should continue to have more of these programs, interchanging programs. But I also do believe that in some countries, and you notice this with respect to wars, etc., it will be extremely difficult in the upcoming, let's say, decades, at least 2 or 3 decades, to be able to have these countries accepting us as a total, accepting as everybody else. So this is my humble opinion. And nevertheless, I started by saying that I really agree with everything that you just said. And I think that we should emphasize and put our focus in this, because we are all equal. There's no difference between, we are all human beings. But I do believe that in some countries, it will take longer than in others. Thank you
But
so
Carla,
much.
Carla,
Yes?
a very fast comment on this. The lecture today is about communication. If these countries or these cultures, they don't, adapt to the multiculturalism, they don't communicate. So it's not a topic.
Exactly.
And I would like to comment also what Zaid mentioned at the end, like with communication, we realize who are we? And I suspect that communication should be the topic regarding peace education and how we can stabilize different, regions. And I mean, it's necessary, people to communicate, because a lot of times I'm listening, us or them or whatever, communication is what Said has mentioned. Like, just, let's agree where we disagree. I mean, this is very, very important. I would like to give the floor to Tatiana. Tatiana is a professor from University of Maribor, Slovenia. She's going to speak more about her, very fast.
I will be very fast. Actually, confirming what Costa says, communication is needed, but I would like to point it out, in this communication, it is needed that we hear each other. First of all, that we are not just talking to each other, that we hear each other. And when we hear each other, we then start to understand each other. And to Zaid, I would like just to say that I was very curious how he will do the presentation when he started with the 6 Hofstede categories, and I like your presentation very much. Thank you. I learned a lot.
And also there is a very nice book, a yellow one, Cultural Maps, that if you will be at the airport, pick it up. It's one of the best books and, supports very much what Zaid has described with us. The floor is to Andrea. Andrea comes from Switzerland, from Bern.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, Professor Zaid, for this very interesting insights, which I really do agree. I just have one question, which always turns me around. It's about this Hofstede basics regarding Western and not Westerners, because as I'm also half Brazilian, and for me, it's always the question, what are Brazilians? Are they Westerners? Because they see them, or we see us as Global South, and Brazilian, for many ways, say we in the Global South and in Globe, also Asians, for example. And so for me, these categories, these dichotomies are, I don't know how to put them. If we use, as Hofstede did, the Westerners and the others, it becomes difficult also with these categories. And it was very funny or interesting for me to see the categories, how you explain them from a Moroccan perspective, which is sometimes very similar to Brazilian ones, and sometimes very different. So it's really interesting. And yes, I learned a lot. Thank you very much. And I think the point which I loved really is the last points you said about listening and asking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. It's really great question. For Hofstede, the dimensions are always on a spectrum. They're always a spectrum. So, for example, power distance. It's a spectrum from low to high power distance. Now, Brazil could be situated in a spot, like, let's say the spectrum is from 1 to 10. I'm not really sure about the culture in Brazil, but I would expect it to be maybe a 4, like it's a low power distance country. But then in the in uncertainty, in the uncertainty, can't remember what it's called, but in another dimension, again, it's a spectrum, and it will be located in another point. Now, Hofstede doesn't really make a distinction between the West and everybody else, but really he has, I mean, he has developed his research. He's been working for at least, I don't know, 50, 60 years on this. And he's like the last research he published, he would have like a world map of each country and where they stand vis-a-vis these 6 dimensions, all on a spectrum. So you may find that Brazil and the US are very similar in one dimension, and again, and Brazil and Saudi Arabia to be very similar in another dimension. If you see what I mean, like, so it's not like a categorization of the world based on a rigid set of dimensions, but the dimensions really, it's on a spectrum. Yeah, I mean, so his research really is to look at that, is to look at each culture and where they stand on a spectrum on each of these dimensions. Like, is it power distance? Is it high power distance, low power distance? Yeah, same thing for all the other dimensions. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you both for question and the answer. The floor to Hubertus. Hubertus is a colleague from Germany, from Wiesbaden.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful talk. I have many thoughts on this, especially this handshake section that you talked about, and I could talk about that, but I would like to make a different point. 2 weeks ago, I was at a training seminar, and we talked about assessment and written exams and how they're supposed to be designed and so on. And at one point, I related a story just from last semester. I had a few students from Vietnam in a class about financial statements. And, the way they wrote was different from the way the German students or other students in that class would write. It was more indirect. They did make the points, but it was expressed differently. And I related that to my colleagues, and I cautioned them that we, as people who expect Western patterns, sometimes misassess students' work because we have a certain expectation. And if that expectation isn't fully met, it's maybe a cultural influence rather than a problem with the line of argument. So that's just a comment, and it's maybe a different perspective on why all of this is relevant. It's relevant for our students, but it's also relevant for ourselves, for our work with the students, so to speak.
That's an excellent point, seriously, because I mean, now you're showing the implications of these cultural differences in terms of how we assess our students' work. Same thing, like if an Arab student writes in an email to a German professor, and they start with a very polite statement at the beginning, and then a very polite or even a more polite statement at the end, the German would maybe suspect that this is a student who's maybe manipulative, that they're sneaky, they're not. Why are they saying that they're so happy to be writing to me? Well, they don't even know me, so why do they say that that it's been an honor to have taken my class? It's so if the German professor just understands that this Arab student, I mean, he's just being polite because that's how the culture is, then all of this will disappear. The same thing for like an Arab faculty who gets an email from an American student or a German student, and just being factual, direct, precise and everything. well, this guy is impolite. How dare, you know, why aren't they calling me Dr. So-and-so, and why aren't they being polite, and so on and so forth. So no, but the point you raise really is very important, because it's even in the way they write, in the way they like solve problems, in the way they communicate in group, if the assignment is a group work and you have a mix of people. Yeah, I mean, the Westerners would be more dominant in that context because they're more assertive, while the, you know, maybe the Arab, the Asians, they're more polite. They tend to, I mean, they start slow. They try to build relationships before getting to the actual problem. So no, I mean, that's really an excellent example. I'm gonna ask you your permission to use it in my other maybe presentations, because it's a good example. It's a very good example.
You're very free to use it.
Thank you. Yes.
So I have a final comment. Listening you know, how globalization can affect the relevance of all what did we say? For example, low context and high context, they are coming from the culture, you know, mainly the ancient, you know, let's say nations like, you know, Greeks, we are a high context nation. So, but globalization changed, you know, have changed, you know, many of us. How do you think that, what is the impact of globalization to the relevance of all these characteristics, Zaid?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a very good question, but it's also a very profound one. I mean, we have now all these tools of communication. We have access to all sorts of you know, of stories, of I mean, let me start with something hopeful. Like there were some studies done in the US, like that found the least racist generation is the are the latest generations. I mean, the Gen Z and the previous one, the millennials. Like racism is going down in the US, in the American society, because these kids are more exposed to information and to facts about other races, and that makes them less racist. So, I mean, I think, I mean, and this goes back to something that Carla said earlier. I mean, when politics gets in, when there are political ambitions behind certain actions, then we move to dehumanizing people. But if we remove politics from it and we just let people talk to people, I mean, most of the time things really, you know, everybody gets along. Yeah, thank you for, I mean, it's a question that I really didn't answer you because I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah.
Thank you. And we will move to the last comment or question from our colleague, Abdellah. Abdellah, the floor is yours. Abdellah?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Zaid, for this insightful presentation. Thank you for this opportunity. My question, would we consider that the artificial intelligence now is modeling the way we should communicate, whether you are an Arab, as you said, or you are Brazilian, or you are from Switzerland? Is it the way that we see, for example, especially that our students now, they are using ChatGPT, for example, to edit their text. They're asking for services like writing or communicate with others, and so they have a like pre-prepared document that they will be using. Are they going to be far from what is this culture from within to a general culture that is now developed by artificial intelligence?
Assalamu alaikum, Si Abdullah. How are you? Yeah, good to hear your voice. And yeah, I mean, it's excellent question. The issue, I mean, it's a question that's, I mean, when you spoke, I started immediately thinking about maybe there is a research project here that I should really consider looking at. Now, like ChatGPT or other AI tools like ChatGPT, I mean, what they do is basically they go online and they're predictive, looking at what were, I mean, yeah, and I mean, they generate language based on the existing data that exists on the internet. Now, when you do a request, when you ask it in English, it will respond in English and respond in a manner that's English-speaking people write with, which should be direct, concise, and so on and so forth. And so I have to try that. I haven't tried it yet, but I need to ask it questions in Arabic and see how it writes in Arabic. If it writes in Arabic the way Arabic people write, like if I ask it to write a letter of application in Arabic, whether it will write it in Arabic in a way that would like include a lot of politeness, or it will write it in Arabic in an English way, like by being so direct and so on and so forth. So that's something that we need to look at. But AI is very biased. AI is Western biased and sometimes even politically biased. Like when you ask it questions, so when you ask it questions about certain issues, it will give you, like, in my experience, ChatGPT is very liberal. It's liberal politics. Like if it was a person, they would vote Democrat in the US elections, they would vote maybe left-wing in the European elections, they would vote socialist maybe, or, I mean, quite liberal views on things. So it is biased. And I think that bias comes from the overwhelming data that exists on the internet, from where ChatGPT gets its, its words and its language. Yeah.
Would you consider the example that our colleague Hubertus has mentioned about the Vietnamese would be the same case, for example, for making the now let's say Moroccan writing now. As you can see, we have our way of writing. As you have mentioned that as a response to Hubertus, to Vietnamese students. But now when you get to ChatGPT, for example, it will not respond the way we respond. It responds the way it's modeled. In other words, it does not bring culture to the text. And this is where we have, like, we need, if the artificial intelligence could create bridges between culture and the language in writing documents, then it will be really a big manipulation of the whole world, because you don't know who is the real interlocutor and who is an outsider or is a foreigner to the language or the culture itself.
No, I mean, it's something really to investigate, definitely. Yeah.
But I think here is the big, I think that this is like the big opportunity for the universities, the way that how do we educate our students, not the technical competencies, but, the critical thinking, the open mind, the internationalization that we are doing there, to be able, to comment and prioritize and decide what they are going to use. We are not, just, receivers, but we should be critical receivers. And also whatever we are doing should be processed. This is also science. Am I right? I think the pedagogy now is a very good opportunity for this. What do they say? Like a lot of names, but this is like the pedagogy is now how do we train ourselves and our students. Now is the opportunity. This will make the difference.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And I will tell you something else. We talk about characteristics. You can customize ChatGPT. I can make ChatGPT to speak like a Greek, and like the way the words that you are going to use to be like a Greek, to be closer to my culture. I mean, you can customize these things. So I think that
you can do everything with that. You can even tell him that 2 + 2 is 3.8. And if you have 500,000 people saying exactly the same thing or even less, it will say to you after a while that 2 + 2 is 3.8. So you can do everything with AI nowadays.
Excellent. So I think that, it's a quarter past the hour. I mean, this was like very successful, I would say, because of the duration of the questions. For me, this is like, a criterion. One of the criteria is like how long the question session will be. So I would like, first of all, to thank Abdellah Sekahri, who introduced us, Zaid. I would like to thank Zaid, for his contribution. Definitely, Zaid, I kept, a note that to invite you again about this cultural shock, because I have experienced as a Greek on abroad, this cultural shock as well. You are going to receive our invitation whenever it's possible, to have you again. I would like to thank very much your participation and speak you soon in one of our next sessions. Thank you very much for your time and your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, سي زايد.
Bye.
تحيات.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
You.